My name is Kim Austin, and I am from the Coconino County Health and Human Services. I'm a public health educator and a League of American Bicycles instructor.
And my name is Martin Ince. I'm a multimodal transportation planner for the city. And I am also a league certified cycling instructor.
All right, so today the goal of this class is to learn to ride safely and legally, to bike with confidence in traffic, to know the basic principles of on-street cycling, understand that you have control over your own safety, and understand bicycling from the driver's perspective. Okay, so when you're driving and you see bicyclists, you can expect where they're going to be. Vice versa, when you're on the road, hopefully that people will know where you are. So, and if there's anything else that you want to learn, let us know. Or if you have questions, please let us know.
So Megan, ask the people online too, if there's something that they have in mind in particular that they want to learn tonight, to type it in. And
everybody can hear you perfectly too. So yeah.
Oh, good. Okay.
So we'll go around the room as well. So if there's something that you want to learn tonight, let us know what it is so we make sure that we cover it for you.
Yes.
I found my school on it.
Great. What school do you go to?
Yeah, elementary.
Kinsey? Oh, love Kinsey. Kinsey's a great school.
Good deal.
Okay. All right.
Anybody else? Anything
Oh,
in particular
I'm sorry.
you want
Anything you just want to learn? Okay. All right. If something pops in your head, just let us know.
I'll keep you guys updated from over here.
Okay, very good. Okay, so the first section is on bicycle crashes, and in order for us to know how to be safe on a bicycle, it's important for us to understand why crashes occur with cyclists. So we have a little bit of information, and it starts with a basic premise that we have more control over our safety as bicyclists than we realize or that we give ourselves credit for. So a lot of times when we're on a bicycle, we feel like we're kind of helpless, like things are out of our control. Cars are zipping by quickly, there's busy intersections. But the point of the class tonight is to give you the idea, kind of give you the tools to understand that we have more control over our safety than we realize. And hopefully we'll do a check-in back at the end and see if you agree with that premise after we fill your head with all the information that we're going to give you. So first of all, why crashes happen? If you look at the universe of all the things that happen to bicyclists in the way of crashes, about half of them are single rider falls. So you hit a curb, you fall over. I was always good for slipping on ice and falling down in the winter. I try not to do that anymore because it is really, really painful sometimes.
I'm good for hitting going off a curb and getting stuck, like you get your tire wedged and then you fall over. That's me. Yeah.
Yep. So 50% of all the things that happen to cyclists are on us. It's just all us. We're all alone. Maybe people see it. Maybe they don't. The second one is about a third of crashes involve other participants like dogs, pedestrians, bicyclists. So that's about a third of crashes when those two things collide. That leaves 17% of bicycle crashes involve motor vehicles.
So it's actually lower than you think, which is kind of what we were thinking about this.
And if you look at just that 17%, here's a graphic with a lot of words on it that shows what happens during that 17% of crashes between bicycles and motor vehicles. So we can see about half, it's the fault of the bicyclist, and about half is the fault of the motorist. So we share a blame about 50-50 between motorists and bicyclists. And you can see for bicyclists, the things that they do wrong most often are riding the wrong way in the street, facing traffic. So riding on the left side instead of the right side is number one. Number two is making a left turn from the right side of the roadway. So you're all the way over on this side when you go across. Lesser percentages are failure to yield for a driveway and running a stop sign red signal. And then if we go down to motorists, the number one thing that motorists do that cause bicycle crashes is making a left turn in front of the cyclist. Number two is making a right turn in front of the cyclist. So this is called the left cross and the right hook as bicycle crashes. And we have slides coming up that show you how to avoid those things. And then smaller percentages are running a stop sign or a traffic signal, opening a car door in front of a cyclist, or failure to yield for a driveway. So that armed with that information, we can talk about what we call layers of crash protection. And here's where we kind of show you where you really take control of your own destiny as a cyclist. So the first layer is bike control. So when you are in control of your bicycle and know how to maneuver and how to stay upright, how to avoid patches of ice and curbs, and the other things that cause falls, how to be courteous around and avoid pedestrians and dogs and other things. We can avoid that first 50% of crashes. So again, that's kind of on you. When you learn to be a competent cyclist, you can help avoid some of those single butt crashes. Number two is following rules. So don't be the cause of crashes. And this goes back to that slide that we saw where 48% of crashes are caused by things that bicyclists do. So don't do those things and you avoid all those crashes. Number three is that we learn how to position ourselves on the roadway correctly to avoid common mistakes that drivers make that lead to bicycle crashes. So if you're in the right place in the roadway, you can avoid other people's mistakes. You can also learn to anticipate what drivers do or what they don't do. And if you're kind of armed with that knowledge ahead of time, you can avoid the mistakes that they make and keep yourself out of the crash. And you can see at the bottom here that just these three, doing just these three things avoid over 90% of bicycle crashes. So you're starting to get the idea, hopefully, that these are things that you can do that avoid crashes. So you're not helpless. You're not on your own, that you can actually take control. And then the last two, number four is avoiding other people's mistakes. And this is something that we've taught before in longer courses about when you're riding a bike, how to take evasive action, essentially. And it's hard to describe in a classroom, easier to do on a bike. And then the last one, of course, is passive safety. So the number one thing is to wear a helmet while you're bicycling. So I'll pause for a moment and see if there's any questions.
Nothing yet.
Nothing yet?
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
I have a quick question. What about like potholes? Do you have, people hitting potholes or?
That's part of that, that avoidance.
Oh, okay.
So it's called crash avoidance.
Okay.
And so you learn, how to, if you see a pothole or a big rock or something, how to,
Or a squirrel
or a squirrel or whatever, and you learn how to get around it without swerving into traffic, because chances are you're in the bike lane, right? And there's cars, and so you can't go, woo, you know what I mean? So you've got to work on how to get around it, kind of thing, or or slam on your brakes without toppling over. Do you know what I mean? Like you can like scoot yourself back really far, you know what I mean? To change the weight. Does that make sense? When you, right, so those kinds of things, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's essentially like you use your front brake more than your back brake. When you use your front brake, if you don't throw your weight backwards, you're gonna go over the handlebars. So it's kind of balancing those two things. Because
So
your front brakes are the brakes that stop you very quickly. So you use those to stop quickly, but you have to go backwards.
Yeah.
Stop.
right, you don't want to, woo.
Yeah, actually on that note, when you guys were talking about like potentially going over your handlebars, we do have a question. Would you consider gloves to be as essential as a helmet?
They protect different things for sure.
I wear them because I get blisters or sweaty hands. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So I wear them for that. And then some gloves have, and it's cold. So some of, but some of them have actual like reflectiveness on the back. So if you're signaling, you know what I mean? Or things like that, they're like multicolored on the back. So they're kind of visible. Mark.
Yeah, and then of course, when you go down in a fall, what's our first instinct is to brace ourselves.
Right.
In flight staff, you end up picking cinders out of your hand.
But I mean, I guess everyone's different, but
And
yeah.
the question came because it was on the last slide.
It
so they were
was, yeah.
asking for
Yes.
The clarification there.
Yeah,
Right.
we glossed over.
And on that note, let's just explain that maybe make sure you're wearing reflective clothing. And at night, you have to have a light on the front, like a vehicle, and you have to have a red reflector. I mean, a light is better, but those are kind of the minimum that you have to have. I always say, light yourself up like a Christmas tree at night, and then everyone can see you coming.
And I think in the old days, they used to tell people to ride as if you were invisible, but I think the better instruction, like ride as if nobody can see you, but I think the better instruction is to ride to make yourself more visible.
Oh, I say be safe, be seen.
You say be seen, exactly.
Yeah.
And we did get someone who has indicated what she'd like to learn. So she'd like to learn the best way to turn left from a busy, light controlled intersection with a left turn lane. So
It's coming.
awesome.
Okay, that's in
Hold on.
biking 201, so.
Right,
Come on,
sorry,
next semester.
sorry. And then she leaves. No, it's coming up. I promise.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to keep going. Principles of traffic law. Oh, oops, that's, I
yeah.
pressed the up button. The down button is the one. Okay. So bicyclists fare best when they act and are treated as drivers of vehicles. So that means act like a car, right? And most likely, you're treated better and you're seen, okay? More than like riding on a sidewalk, do you know what I mean? Versus like a pedestrian riding, like you ride like a car. So you're on the road, you're acting like a driver of a car, okay? So ARA statute 28-812 is the applicability of traffic laws to bicycle riders. So here we're in legality. Bicyclists are granted all of the rights and are subject to all of the duties applicable to the driver of a vehicle. So basically, by law, we are good to ride on the road. And we should ride on the road because it's actually the safest place to be. You want to add anything?
No, but we should explain that ARS is Arizona Revised
Oh,
Statute.
I'm
So
sorry,
state-
Arizona
state law.
revised statutes, I apologize. All right, should I keep going? Okay. Is this, am I still on am I good?
You're good?
Okay, so basically, first come, first serve. So if you're at a stop sign, okay, if the car arrived before you, they have the right of way. If you arrive first, you have the right of way, right? Pretty basic. Drive on the right-hand side of the road, okay? So just like a car, you are not, or you should not see a car driving on the right, on the left side of the road because they're going the wrong way,
So it
right?
depends on what country you're in. Yeah,
Unless
here,
in the
here,
United States,
in this country.
in this country, drivers drive on the right side of the road. Bicyclists should do the same, okay? Yield to cross traffic. Yes,
So if the drivers drive on the right side, so do we also have to go on the right side?
drivers should drive the same side of the road as bicyclists. Bicycles and cars should be going the same direction on the same side of the road. I know. Yes. So if you're riding your bike and the traffic's coming at you, you're on the wrong side of the road. Okay? We good? Okay, so right, yield when you're changing lanes, just like a driver, okay? A driver should signal, look over their shoulder before they change your lane. Bicyclists are the same thing. I mean, we don't have a turn signal, but we have hands. Speed positioning, okay? And intersection positioning. When we position ourselves at an intersection, we're gonna go over this as we go. We'll put ourselves in a safer position than, I don't know. We just have to keep going with this one to explain it a little bit more, but
Yeah, we'll go through this. It'll become.
it'll be better.
Yeah.
So basically, if you're riding really slow, make sure you're on the side of the road. You shouldn't be in the middle of the lane if you're going 2 miles an hour and you're out for a little stroll. Does that make sense?
Yes, speed positioning is the idea
Speed.
that slower vehicles stay to the right,
Uh-huh.
faster vehicles pass.
Okay, all right. Okay, I don't know what side we're on, but am I still going? Is this still me?
Go the other direction.
I did. Why do I do that? Okay, is this you? or is
Yeah,
this-
so we're gonna cover a couple different scenarios. The first set involved just going along the road, so riding kind of along the roadway segment. And the second one involves going through intersections, including making turns. So we've got a few things here for you. First of all, just riding along the road. This is pretty straightforward. But the number one thing is to be predictable and ride in a straight line. So anytime you're going like this, going in and out, weaving, you're not being predictable, and it will be more difficult for cars to.
This is a lot in neighborhoods, where there's not, there's parked cars in front of houses. And so, your instinct is to like get off the road and then, but yeah.
Right, so even like in some cases, we don't often have a lot of space with cyclists on the road, but sometimes there's a lot of space between the side of the road. And when you have a situation like that, it's best to stay in a straight line instead of kind of weaving and losing all that space. Same when there's vehicles parked along the side of the road. This doesn't happen a lot, but you can imagine it downtown or in some residential areas where there are some vehicles parked. Stay in a straight line to the left of those vehicles and don't go in and out. Because every time as a cyclist, you
Use
go
your pointer.
in.
Look at that.
Every time you go in between these parked cars, you have to come back out. When you come back out, you have to make sure that there's not a car coming from behind. And when you go in, this car coming from behind may or may not see you. So best just to stay in a straight line right here. And speaking of parked cars, I think this one is you.
Is it? I don't know.
We go back and forth.
I don't know. Just hold on to it. Okay, so you don't want to be in the door zone. Okay, so a lot of places, including Flagstaff, have the parking lane next to the bike lane, right? And so as a driver, it's always good to be aware and look to make sure there isn't a bicyclist. On the same token, a bicyclist driving in the bike lane perfectly, that's where they should be. They're still in the door zone. Okay, so always be aware. Do you see anyone in it? Is there anyone coming? I tend to hug, just to make sure, that kind of thing. But if you notice someone up ahead getting into their car, and then you're like, okay, or they're walking up to their car and you see them, you're like, okay, don't open the car. Or someone that just parked like up ahead, okay, be careful. So just kind of be aware of the door zone.
Okay, state law tells us that we need to ride as close as practicable to the right-hand curb or edge of the roadway. So have you heard this before in the advice given? Always stay close to the right edge of the roadway as a cyclist. So that is state law. However, there are 4 exceptions to riding right, and this is important for safety because you don't want to always stay on the right-hand side of the road. Those exceptions are when you're passing another bicycle or a vehicle. So if you're a very fast cyclist, you go by other cyclists, you can move over to the left. When you're preparing to make a left turn, so we saw before that cyclists making a left turn from the right-hand lane is one of the significant causes of crashes. So when you make a left turn, get over to the left side of the road before you do that. And you can see here it's legal to do that as well. Number 3 is to avoid conditions or objects in the roadway that are unsafe. We'll see a little bit more about that in a minute, including potholes. And then the 4th one is when the lane is too narrow to share side by side. And Kim will share a slide with you in a few moments that illustrate that. So first conditions, here we see different edges of roadways. In this case, it looks like this, well, actually, it looks like this is a bike lane per that sign.
But this sure looks like a shoulder to me.
Yeah.
And if you go off that bike lane, there's an alligator infested ditch. Right along, I don't know if it's alligator.
You're gonna
infested,
take
but
a
I
dip
imagine.
in the water that's down in that big, yeah.
Here we see, this is called the gutter pan. It's meant to convey drainage. And usually it's made of concrete, whereas the adjoining roadway is made of asphalt. And because they're made of different materials, they tend to separate. So
You'll
you
see
can
that on
this.
4th Street.
You'll see that on 4th Street. So here you see there's a pretty good ridge between the two. Is that safe for a cyclist to go over? Not particularly.
See, that would make me fall right there.
You
know, like, You're thinking, okay, I gotta get up there, right? And then you're like, you're like, okay, you almost have to like turn and go over, you know what I mean? If you kind of, inch over.
Kind of, yeah, kind of angle you.
I like going into little ditches. I like jumping in.
That's good. Most of us don't. That's awesome that you do.
I'll fight the alligator.
Okay.
So here, as riding as far right as practicable, clearly does not mean riding in the gutter.
Okay.
You can be out here. The lower left one, this shows a bike lane with all kinds of debris in it.
Yeah.
This never happens in Flagstaff. Cinders or snow or ice in our bike lanes. And this last one is a drainage grate. And I have to say, we have made great strides over the last, 20
This
years.
is 4th
with
Street as well, right here.
Drainage grates. This one you can probably do in a mountain bike, but if you're on a ski tire bike, I would proceed with caution. So any of these situations, you can move over to avoid those. conditions.
Right, so
You
you
do not
should
have
be
to
riding over here. You know
Right,
what I mean?
You don't have to put yourself in an unsafe position just to ride right.
Is this me?
That's you.
Okay, all right, so this is a typical roadway, like the length of one lane of a road. So you've got the edge or the sidewalk, okay, and the gutter pan, let's say. And then you have a bike lane that's typically 3 feet wide, okay? So you've got a 2 width of a bicycle and 1 width to avoid hazards, okay? And then you've got a 3 foot minimum passing distance. And I don't know if you've seen there's some advertisements like give 3 feet. When you pass as a driver, when you pass for bicyclists, if you're passing another bicyclist, you need to give 3 feet, okay, of distance around the bicyclist, okay, just to make sure. And then you've got the 7 feet of a vehicle lane, and then 1 lane, and then the oncoming lane. Okay, so that is like 14 feet width. That's not including the gutter pan. So if your road is not this wide, okay, then it's safer to take the lane, and it's legal to take the lane because there's not enough room for a car to go around you. So they may, try and cut too close. Do you know what I mean? If the lane isn't wide enough to allow all of this to happen, then the bicyclist tends to stay too far over, possibly falling on the gutter or something like that we just saw, and the driver might not give 3 feet. So staying too far right encourages drivers to make an unsafe pass, not giving you that 3 feet. And so it's safer and legal to take the lane, because then that forces the driver to be behind you, at least until the road widens or there's a bike lane or something. Does that make sense? Okay.
So in some parts of the city, we put these markings on the roadway. They're called shared lane markings. They are on San Francisco and Aspen and Birch Street downtown.
And there's some on campus as well.
There's some on campus as well. And the purpose of them is to show a bicyclist where to position themselves. And it's essentially they're there to take the lane. So when the roadway is too narrow, as Kim described to share the lane, you as a cyclist can position yourself in the middle of the lane. This shows you where to be. This also gives drivers kind of validation that bicyclists may be there and they have the right to take the lane. So it kind of works on both ends. And you can see if they're cleverly placed, that it keeps you out of the door zone as well. This is not San Francisco Street, maybe a street in San Francisco, but it actually is a condition. It shows something that we see frequently on San Francisco Street. Here we have the shared lane marking. Here we have a row of parked cars, and the cyclist has positioned himself between the shared lane marking and the parked car. So he's really at double jeopardy of, number one, this car door opening and getting doored, and number two, of a vehicle passing him on this side and not leaving him.
Right, because if they try and sneak in, they can't cross, because there's oncoming traffic, And so they might try and sneak in and, you know, get too close and,
Yeah. And I believe there are two reasons why people do this. And again, we see this on San Francisco Street and downtown Flagstaff. But I think there's two reasons why people do that. One is that they're a little bit timid about being a bike rider and they don't feel quite confident enough to take the lane.
that's me.
That's you. Okay.
Yeah.
By the end of this hour, you will have overcome that. I promise. And the second thing I think is they feel like they're holding up vehicles from being able to get around them. Neither of those are good reasons to not take the lane. Vehicles are going slow in San Francisco anyway. We typically use these on streets that don't have high speeds. And so they'll be behind you anyway. And you should never sacrifice your safety for what you perceive to be somebody else's convenience. Like if you feel like you're holding up a vehicle, but you're safer taking the lane, then you should take the lane.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so this is a driver. So within this class, we mixed in what drivers should do and what bicyclists should do. Just to make sure everyone, I mean, people who ride a bike, you know, should know what to do, but drivers need to know where to expect bicyclists too. Like it's a cooperation, a partnership, so that everyone comes out safely. So as a driver, okay, you need to give 3 feet minimum when you're passing a bike. Okay, so as a driver, you can legally cross the double yellow line to get around a biker to give them that 3 feet. Okay, that is by law legal. If there's oncoming traffic, obviously you don't want to cross that double lane. So you just stay behind and then wait. And then when it's safe, you can go around them. Okay. Larger big vehicles should probably give more than 3 feet, partially because they're bigger and it's a little harder to see the bike, you know, because of and sometimes they carry some, like they blow, you know, like if they're very big and stuff.
They create their own little tornadoes.
Thank you. Yes. And then of course, blind spots. You always want to make sure that you're checking blind spots for bicyclists.
Okay, that was the section on riding along a roadway. Now we cover going through intersections.
Should we just ask questions? Does anyone have any questions?
No, but we do have a comment that as a driver, this is great info to learn.
Cool. Great.
I actually was behind a lady riding the other day, and I guess she had taken the road, and I'm like, okay, I'm behind her, and she was going, I'm like, okay, so now I understand what she's doing.
She's just protecting herself. That's it. Now you know exactly. Yes. That is so you can be seen when you're out riding.
We have to provide some instruction.
Right, exactly. Okay, intersection.
Now we talk about intersection. and
Fun
lane
stuff
positioning.
now. We're
So
gonna get to
here's-
those questions.
Here's the basic principle of intersection and lane positioning. This is bicyclists and vehicles as well, right? We make right turns from the right side of the street. We make left turns from the left side, and we go straight from the middle of the street. And for bicyclists, this has two different meanings. One refers to what lane you should be in, and number two refers to what part of the lane you should be in. As cyclists, we don't take up much of the lane for travel. So if we don't position ourselves carefully, we may encourage cars to go around us in an unsafe manner. If they feel like they can squeeze by us, they might try to do that. But if we're in the right place in the lane, cars will never try to do that. And so we're encouraging cars to behave better and not make unsafe passes. So you can see here, that's kind of illustrated. These three triplets of cyclists are all riding in a single lane. But here we can see what happens when you have multiple lanes. And the principle here is that we take the rightmost lane that leads to the destination where we want to go. So if you're turning left, like in this case, and there are dual lefts, we get in the rightmost lane. If we're going straight and there's two straight lanes, we get into the rightmost lane. Here you can see there are two right turning lanes. So if we were turning right as a cyclist, which lane would we get into?
Right.
Yes, ding ding.
Woo-hoo! You get a slap bracelet in your hand.
And Kim's gonna tell us how to
Oh,
avoid.
Okay,
right up to the
so
crosses.
right hooks. Right hook happens when you stop at an intersection and so the bicyclist is going straight and the car is turning right. Okay, it's called a right hook. So it also, yeah, so then what happens is, so the driver has not seen the bicyclist, okay? And so you don't want to ride in the right turn only lane, okay? Or parking lanes. So if, we're going to get to that later, so I don't want to go too far. I'll just read these and we'll ask questions as we go. Okay, so so if this car's turning right, okay, so this bicyclist could move behind to avoid getting hooked. Does that make sense? Right? Okay, so you want to be very cautious riding past the line of stopped cars, and you want to monitor the position of the cars on your left. So let's say they're here, and all of a sudden his turn signal goes on and you notice it because you're right there, you're like, oh, okay. So you want to avoid to be, hooked. So I would either, like let them go first, right? Or maybe inch forward a smidge so that they can see you, so that they let you go first. Does that make sense?
If someone is behind you and you're like pushed into like a tiny corner piece, would you still scoot back or would you move a little forward?
If I'm stuck in a corner, I'd probably let them go first and then get behind them.
Kind of like in a box. So it's like this, and then the driveway, and then the bike goes. So concrete, and then back here is a car and another car. What do you do?
And you know that they're turning right in front of you. So you want to, I would probably, I might inch forward so they can see me. Actually, because if there's a car behind it, then I'm going to have to wait for that other car because I don't want to cut that car off, right? I don't know, Martin.
I would think the car that's in front of you is not gonna be able to see you. They just assume that they haven't seen you, and then the car that's a little bit behind, it might be able to see you, but I would probably try to make eye contact with them. I'd let the first car go.
Yeah,
forward.
like,
I wouldn't,
like,
I wouldn't try to get in
You're
front
at
of the
this,
first
you're
car.
like, hey, I'm going straight, like, hey, let them know
Yeah.
what your plans are so that, and then the driver's like, oh, okay, let them go and then turn.
So in Flagstaff, we often have a bike lane along here, which if there's a line of cars stopped, you can use a bicyclist can go kind of ahead of all of them in the bike lane. But in doing that, you may be putting yourself in a position where a car is going to turn right in front of you. If you can see that they're using their turn signal, it's a little bit easier because they're going to turn and you can react. Like Kim said, you can get behind them. Unfortunately, we know that a lot of cars that are turning right either have broken turn signals or they never learned how to use their turn signals. So they don't have their turn signal on, so you don't really know if they're going to turn right or not. So that's where that last one becomes kind of important. And like if you're getting right up to the intersection where a car would turn right, if the car is like right alongside of you, you're kind of at danger. If that car turns, it's going to turn into you. If there's a car in front of you, you know that the danger is past. They're going through the intersection. If there's a car behind you, then you can kind of judge where you are relative to the intersection and see if you can make it through before they get up to the intersection and turn right. It's less complicated than it sounds. I think it's kind of intuitive, but you're just sort of watching. You're watching the cars on your left and kind of assessing which one might be a threat to you as you go through the intersection.
It's like defensive biking. You know what I mean?
Very much so.
So do I need to, is that the next one or do I still, oh, there it is.
The next one.
There's the next one. Am I still this?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is called a left cross, okay? So in this situation, you want to be visible. And right now, the biker is not super visible, right? Because this car at the top is really only paying attention to this car, like trying to judge, ooh, can I go before they turn, because there's a lot of impatient drivers around, so they're always trying to like find that little gap if they can turn and whatever, okay? So you want to watch your position relative to gaps in traffic and keep an eye out, okay? When you're passing a line of cars that are waiting to turn left, look behind them and remember, you may be concealed, okay? So make sure you're aware of what everyone's doing, whatever. And if you have to, wait for someone to pass in front of you or something, then that's fine.
Okay, so I think that one of the callers,
Here we go.
Online
Here we go.
participants.
Left turn.
asked about making a left turn. And really, on busy streets, I think the most nerve-wracking maneuver that we do as bicyclists is making a left turn. Everything else is a little bit more straightforward, but making a left turn is a little bit more challenging because we're mixing up with traffic essentially. But there are 3 ways to make a left turn that are illustrated on this little diagram. The first one is as a vehicle. So if you were driving a car and you want to make a left turn, you get into the left turn lane. You look in front of you for a gap in traffic. And when it's safe to make that turn, you make that turn. It's the same thing for a cyclist. The challenging part is getting across the lane of traffic because you have to watch for cars coming from behind. And then when it's safe to turn, making that left turn, you need a longer gap than you do in your car because we bicyclists tend to be slow. We don't have an acceleration pedal like a car does. It's all us. Unless you have an e-bike.
Unless you have an e-bike, right? And
You
a
can go
throttle
faster.
or, yeah.
So so making a left turn as a vehicle is essentially just like making a left turn as a car. Making a left turn as a pedestrian means that you go straight through the intersection to the far crosswalk, to the far corner. In this case, they dismounted their bike, but when it's safe to go forward, either you have a gap in traffic or it's your turn to go. If there's a stop sign or the light has turned green and the walk signal has come on, and you can proceed across the intersection. And then presumably at this side, you can get back on your bike and keep riding. And the third way is called a box turn. It's kind of a combination of the two. You ride through the intersection almost to the far corner, but stop in this lane here. Physically dismount your bike and turn it to the right.
And then lift
direction
it up
of
and
traffic.
just inch it like this.
And then again, when it's your turn to go, if it's a stop sign, when there's a green light, if it's a signal, or when it's safe to do so, if there's neither one of those, then you can go through.
And
The
you-
advantage of these
yeah.
two is you don't have to go across lanes of traffic or turn when there's oncoming traffic.
And you notice in this box turn, the biker positions himself in front, so he's visible to the car behind him.
Yep, so a few more things about making a left turn as a vehicle. In a lot of cases, there's not a dedicated left turn. So in that case, the bicyclist moves to the left side of the lane before turning left. So here, there's just 2 lanes of traffic. This shows a path of travel for a cyclist. The star indicates where they look behind them to make sure that it's safe to move over. So if it's safe to move over, they move over to the left side of the lane. And then when it's safe to do so, they make their left turn. And this is another version of what we saw before of bicyclists making left turns from the right side of the roadway. If you're over here and waiting to make a right turn, you are encouraging cars to pass you on the right. And if they pass you at the moment that you're starting to make your left,
Then,
consequences are bad.
and my star would be like way down here. So, yeah, or like that. No, that's exactly what my star would be. The next slide.
Yeah, this shows a maneuver when you have to cross multiple lanes of traffic. And I think of, I ride up on 4th Street and then cross over at Huntington and make a left turn. But for every lane, you check behind you to see if there are cars coming. If it's safe, you move over to the next lane, ride there, look behind you. If there's any cars coming, when it's clear, you move over to that lane, and then finally move over to the left turn lane. So this can take a pretty long distance. And can be challenging for bicyclists who are not comfortable in traffic. So that's why there are the other two options.
Right.
So honestly, if it's busy when I'm coming up 4th Street, we get ahead of ourselves.
Where'd it go? There you go.
I think you're going back.
You're going the wrong way. There we go.
I can explain it, we still got confused.
Seriously.
Anyway, when I'm coming up 4th Street and I look behind me and I see there's a lot of traffic, I don't even try to make a left turn. I'll just go through the intersection and make either a box turn or turn as a pedestrian, because there's just too much traffic for me to try to negotiate getting across to make a left turn. And it's a little bit less convenient for me. It takes a little bit more time, but I'm much happier, and I know that I'm safer. So really, it's up to you. And on the mornings if I leave early enough, there's no traffic at all, I look behind me and it's clear, there's no traffic, then sure, I'll go over and make that left turn. But just remember that you have those options, and do what's comfortable for you. And then one more thing about the box turn, we recently installed these in Flagstaff at the corner of Butler and Beaver, Butler in San Francisco, and Butler and Lone Tree, and they're referred to as 2-stage left turn boxes, and it essentially is a box where you are directed to make a left turn via the box turn method. So you can see here in this diagram, the purple line shows a left turn across multiple lanes of traffic as a vehicle, and the green line shows a box turn where you go straight and then get into the green box, and then again physically turn your bicycle into the other direction. And when the light changes to green, or when it's safe, or when it's your turn, you can proceed forward.
And that's all for a bike.
That's all for a bike.
Yeah. Drivers should not be in the green box turn bike.
Yeah, and there's nothing about the green box that, you don't need to have a green box to
No.
make a box turn, but it just shows bicyclists where to do that. It encourages them to do that.
And it shows drivers, oh, this is where a biker should be.
Yeah.
At this intersection or whatever.
So just a quick question though, when you're doing that left.
The back,
left and you're doing, not the purple line there.
Uh-huh.
So do you get like to the far left, cars are here, are you on the left side of that car, or are you still on the right side of the car in the left lane? Like over right there, are you on, so you're on the right side of the car, on the outside of the car, right? So
Yeah,
you're turning with it, right?
In a case like that, either be in front of the cars or behind the cars.
In front,
It's-
okay, but in
yeah.
front, but on the right or closer to the closer to the left side. You see
So
what I'm saying?
so in this instance, right, some of the cars can go straight.
Okay.
Okay, so in that instance, and I'm turning left, then I'm gonna be on the
outside.
left side.
Okay.
Okay, if it's a left turn only, me personally, I'm gonna be in front. I'm
In
gonna
front.
take the lane,
Okay,
okay?
okay.
Until I turn and then I get in the bike lane.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It goes back to the principle of, does a car have room in the lane to pass you safely?
And
If
usually
they don't, then put yourself in a position where they can't.
where they
there's no chance
can't
of
pass you until
Okay.
it's safe to do so.
Okay.
We have a related question. Are hand signals required by law for bicyclists or just encouraged?
Required by law.
Required by law.
And encouraged.
And encouraged.
And yes, both. Please use hand signals. Should we go over hand signals? No, just kidding. That's a good question.
I'm sure that it's in here.
I was gonna say by law, but I thought, I don't actually know that for sure.
It's ARS 28-756.
Oh,
There it is.
all right.
Okay.
So if you don't, that's what's going to be written on your ticket.
Right.
All right.
Okay, one more point about left turns. This comes up downtown as well. But nothing really changes when you make a left turn from a one-way street. Let's say this is San Francisco and this is Birch. Be in the left lane to make that left turn. Don't make it from the left hand. Even though we have shared lane markings in this lane. Get over to the left
Yeah,
lane.
so that's what a lot of people do. So there's a shared lane marking here, but there's not one here. So bicyclists think they have to stay here, but they want to go here. So they, you know what I mean? So they need to be in the left lane if they're going to turn left. Does that make sense?
It does.
Just because,
I actually thought, I was like, oh, I have to stay in the right lane. I mean, I still will move to the left lane when I'm turning left, but I'm always like, oh, I'm not supposed to be here. So that's good to know.
I mean, if you're going to turn left, get in the left lane.
Mhm.
Yeah. If you're going straight, yeah, be in the right because the slower cars go on the
Mhm.
right turn.
Yeah, this makes sense.
Yeah, it's one of the confusing things about all the markings that we put on the road, like bike lanes and shared lane markings. Like those are there for you to use, yes, but like you don't have to use those all the time.
You're not like
If you need to,
stuck
yeah.
in this like,
If you need to get
okay,
out the door zone,
I
you
need to go
turn left.
there.
Yeah. You get to use the whole road.
Awesome.
Oh, okay. So back to drivers, right? So as a driver for right turns, you want to watch for cyclists in advance of the turn. Okay, I'm making right. I want to look, check my blind spots, check to make sure. It's hard to judge when you're in a car how fast a bicycle is going. You might think, oh, I'm going so much faster, I'm in a car. But then you get to turn and you turn right into them because they're going faster than you think. So it's really
Especially
hard to judge,
e-bikes.
especially if you're on an e-bike going 30 miles an hour, okay? Remember, they're difficult to see. So just kind of be aware. Know that, okay, oh, I passed a biker a while ago. And okay, where'd they go? Did they turn? Are they still there? You know, like, where'd they go? Keep an eye on it. A right turn on red. Look left, right, left. Okay. That's very simple. And I teach the kids. Okay. So pedestrians and bicyclists look. Okay. And then left turns. Scan the bike lanes and the sidewalks. You know, up ahead. Are any bicyclists coming that I can't see? Is there anyone on the sidewalk? Is there a pedestrian in the crosswalk? You know, just kind of be aware that there might be other people on bikes and cars around you.
All right, we're going to talk about a couple of specific facilities and some rules and guidelines. The first one is bike lanes, and the question is, of all the stuff that we covered about making turns, about riding along the roadway, how does the presence of bike lanes on the street change any of what we've told you so far? A hazard guess? It really doesn't. And just like we talked about, your lane positioning does not change. Like we just talked about a moment ago, leave the bike lane when you need to. So don't turn left from the bike lane. Like you don't have to stay in the bike lane. If you need to turn left, get into the left lane of travel. Stay out of the door zone. So if you are in a bike lane and you're adjacent to parked cars, sometimes there's room enough to stay in the bike lane on the very left edge of it and be out of that door zone. But if you're not quite comfortable, move out of the door zone. Move left to avoid right hooks like we talked about. You can get behind cars that are turning left. And be very, 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 very careful when you pull alongside a truck or bus on the right. Because a truck or bus has enormous blind spots. And if you pull up alongside of them, they will not see you. And if they're turning right, they will never have seen you. So when you pull up alongside of them, you need to make sure that you're in a position where you're not going to put yourself in danger. And you have to understand that they're not going to see you.
I think you almost have to get like almost in front, you know, so they're looking like, or yeah, get way behind them. Don't get beside them, I don't think.
And recently in Flagstaff along Beaver Street and Butler, we installed this row of curbs with candlesticks. We call
Have you seen them?
Yeah.
It's on Beaver and Butler. Yes, it's super
Have you
cool.
ridden in them?
I haven't.
No.
I haven't seen them.
So this provides an extra kind of layer of protection between where cars are and where the cyclist is, but it does bring up a couple of principles for riding. Number one is that making a vehicular turn can be much more challenging because you are kind of stuck behind this. Like, let's say this person wanted to turn left up here. They really needed to get into the lane back here to do that because they can't go across the lane right before the intersection. So typically you end up making either a left turn as a pedestrian or left turning as a box turn.
Yeah, you have to plan.
You have
Like,
to plan
there's no
when you're
like last
turning.
minute, oh, that's where I need to turn.
Right.
You're sort of stuck in that lane.
We still have the same issues with right turning vehicles, with the right hook. It may be a little bit even more pronounced because we've got this thing in between and vehicles may not, car drivers may not be kind of in tune to looking for you as a cyclist in that place. So they may come up here and want to make a turn into a driveway and you have to be kind of aware of them. And then at driveways, like it looks like there's one right here, the driver's attention is going to be focused on the roadway and maybe looking past you in the bike lane. So just be careful when there's a car pulling up that you know that they see you, or that you give them space or that you move ahead or whatever it is to avoid those crashes. You do sidewalks?
Okay, sidewalks. Megan was asking about sidewalks. Okay, is it legal to ride on a sidewalk in Flagstaff? Do you guys know? Megan?
Sometimes.
I would say something.
Vague. That's weak.
That's either a vague or a safe
Yeah.
answer.
Okay, so yes. Okay, now there are some places in Flagstaff that no, you cannot ride on the sidewalk. Okay, and generally you shouldn't ride on the sidewalk. Okay, and we'll explain that as we go. So here is downtown Flagstaff. Ooh, I could choose a pointer. Okay, so here's Route 66. Okay, so we've got the north side and the south side. This is San Francisco. You cannot ride on the sidewalk on San Francisco from Butler. Okay, basically all the way up. Okay, same with Beaver down. Okay, there are some exceptions. You know that that super highway, it goes along Route 66 by the visitor center and the Amtrak. Okay, there is a kind of a sidewalk there, kind of a continuation of the foot. Is that right? It's
It's a
kind
foot
of
trail. Yeah.
it's part of the foot. You can ride on that. Okay, and then when you get to Cherry, okay, there are parts of Cherry that you can, but basically downtown, you should not be riding on the sidewalk, which is why there's shared lane markings.
And the primary reason for that, of course, is that the sidewalks are very narrow and there tends to be a lot of pedestrians.
And-
Bikes, pedestrians, narrow sidewalks don't mix. Very well.
And some of the restaurants have pulled some out, like increased their space of outdoor dining, and that really is hard to maneuver. So, okay, let's see. However, okay, studies have found that biking on sidewalks actually increases your risk of a crash. And that's compared to the riding on the road. And the reason is, okay, motorists are generally not looking at sidewalks. They're not looking for a biker on the sidewalk, okay? And so if this white car, for instance, okay, if this gentleman was riding the other way, okay, this car might be looking in this direction because they're going to take a left and they're not paying attention to anyone over here. Does that make sense? They're looking at the road, they're not looking at the sidewalk. Okay, also bikers probably are faster than a lot of motorists can judge their speed. Okay, and then there's parked cars, there's landscaping, there's hedges, there's trees, okay, that are blocking visibility of bikers. And then of course, riding on the sidewalk against traffic increases the risk of a crash. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so is it still me?
Mhm.
Okay, so here's an example of what. So you have this car this car is going to make a right, okay? And this car is looking this way, really, to see if the traffic, you know, there's a gap in traffic for them to take a right, okay? So they might see this guy, okay? They probably are not gonna see this guy, but they are not looking at these two right here, not at all.
The one in the pink and the one in the
The
red
pink
for everyone
And
online.
this guy, I don't know, orange,
And yeah, and especially the one in orange,
this guy, not at all.
they may never look to the right, because
Mm-mm.
their focus is on gaps of traffic to the left. And they may never, ever look right. So if you're coming up, the person in orange,
This happens a lot on 180 Fort Valley Road, right? You've got that really nice foots trail, the paved foots trail that's on the left side of the road. Okay, and so people, they're going both ways on that foots trail, which is, it's a great foots trail, but you have to be careful because they're not drivers that come out, there have been collisions right there.
it's also a fast road. So
And it's a
drivers
fast
are
road.
even more kind of in tune to those gaps in traffic, because they know they have to pull up quicker. Because that road is fast and busy.
In this instance, we have this car, and this car is, I'm assuming going straight, no, turning.
Turning left.
Turning left. So they're aiming for here, okay? So they're looking at oncoming traffic, but they're not looking at these two bicyclists. I mean, you could replace these with pedestrians too, frankly, right? Because they're on the sidewalk. And so they're not looking here. How many times have you seen a car turning left because there's a gap in traffic, but oh shoot, they have to stop in the middle of the lane because they have to let the pedestrian go, or else they would have hit the pedestrian. I see that every day, you know? And so that you just have to be super careful, because that driver is not looking anywhere but on oncoming traffic for gap in traffic. Okay, is this you?
Yeah, foots trails, everybody's familiar with the Flagstaff urban trail system. Lots of bicycles prefer them because they get yourself away from traffic. A lot of foots trails go through some really beautiful natural areas where you have not even one worry about traffic because there's nowhere in sight. However, we do have some other trails that are located along busy roadways. Kim gave the example of Fort Valley Road. Route 66 is another one where the trail is adjacent to the roadway. So they're generally safe, but as Kim mentioned, they have the same potential conflicts when you cross driveways and intersections. So if you're using a foots trail, be extra cautious when you go across driveways and cars are present when you go through intersections. And if you're going on the direction with the foots where you're with traffic, you're a little bit better off when you're coming against traffic. Remember that lots of cars turning right onto the roadway are not going to look for you coming from their right. They're looking to their left, you're coming from their right.
The super highway, I call it the super highway. It's not a highway, but it's the one that's along Route 66. And it crosses, I think the first one it crosses is Ponderosa Parkway or Enterprise, whatever that road is.
Yeah.
Like there's an actual intersection right there, right? And so you're cruising and you're like, yeah, I'm going. And then, you know, you have to be careful because, you know, you want to just cruise right through that intersection and not slow down because you're making good time, but you could get hooked. So you have to be really careful right there. I tend to wait and cross with the walk signal. Okay, but then you get to Steve's and Fourth, like there's a whole bunch past that you have that same issue. And so you have to be careful about that.
Just a little bit about courtesy on foots trails as a cyclist. So cyclists are required to yield to pedestrians and other trail users. And yield just means that, like, let them go first, stay out of their way. Keep your speed under control, especially those of you who have e-bikes. And you can go fast on foots trails when there's pedestrians present. You know, give them the benefit of the doubt in some respect by slowing down.
And this is an animal, a person walking. We had to be like, what is that? This is a person walking an animal. That's a person walking an animal.
That's a small bear.
Right, that's a fox or something. No.
All users on foots trails stay to the right. unless you're passing as a cyclist, you're going around a pedestrian and you go over to the left for a moment. But otherwise stay to the right. And when you're passing somebody, always provide an audible signal. Easiest way to do that is to say on your left, and make sure that they hear you.
And
I
pray
find
that they're not wearing earbuds and they have no idea what you just said.
chances are they are, but nonetheless. I find one of the most useful items on my bike is a bell.
And I think there should be a belt. Yep, there it
Give us
is.
what does a bell sound like?
Yeah, let's do it. Woo!
Yeah.
That's nice.
I would say that's a Pee Wee Herman bell.
I think
Is that a
there's only a
relevant
few of us
cultural
who
reference
actually
anymore?
know
I
who
think
that is.
And crosswalks.
Crosswalk.
Another question, is it legal for bicyclists to ride their bike through a crosswalk? Who says yes? Who says no?
Can you ride your bike through a crosswalk?
Unless it's the lights.
Oh, yeah.
Come up, we get off and then.
Yeah.
we walk.
This person is walking their bike. This is clearly a staged photo and they are in bottle. That doesn't really count. Yes, it is legal to ride a bike through a crosswalk, and that, it doesn't actually say that in state law, but it was decided by the Arizona Supreme Court way back in 1980. Who remembers 1980? However, if you do, when you do go through a crosswalk, always follow the pedestrian signal. So, you know, there's either red don't walk or white do
Or a
walk,
guy.
walking white man. So follow the signal, slow down in advance and be prepared to yield or to stop if there are vehicles coming. And watch for turning vehicles as you go into the crosswalk. And they're going to come from three places. So the first place is parallel to you, alongside of you and turning right in front of you. The second place is from the opposite direction, turning left in front of you. And then the third place is coming perpendicular to where you are and turning right. So 3 points of conflict potentially of vehicles crossing your path. So you need to be very careful. You don't necessarily have to dismount as we saw legally. However, you need to kind of slow down. If you're a pedestrian, you can enter a crosswalk when it's safe to do so. And I think the same principle really applies to bicyclists. So when it's safe to enter the crosswalk, and you can do that. And once you're in the crosswalk, you have the right of way. But you almost always have to slow down before you enter and make sure that there's no vehicles immediately coming.
And I do teach kids to walk their bikes across, because a lot of times kids just are either
Yeah.
all or nothing. And so if kids aren't paying attention to other cars as much as adults are. And so I do tell them to get off and walk, because then they're at least going slower, you know, they're at least paying a little more attention than, you know, going as fast as you can. But generally, I would say, yeah, slow down when you get to, you know, because you don't want to have to get off your bike if you're making time and you're commuting to work. Okay, but you need to slow down, you know, and, you know, if there's other cars and the walk signal isn't there, don't go through the intersection.
And
Okay,
just even when you have the walk signal, just
yeah,
by virtue
just
of those-
watch.
Those three movements, it's complicated. It's more than a kid can really handle.
It's
to be
more
able
than
to
they can.
watch.
Yeah, sometimes it's more than an adult. So, yeah, you're going, you know, I'll wait and I'll be like, you know, hey, you know, like, do you see me, kind of a thing, you know? I'm like miming through the window, like, hey, I'm here.
All right, how's our,
Are we
a little
doing,
bit, we're over.
We're
time.
We're a
over.
little over 7, but I mean, you know, you guys can,
we're okay?
Yeah.
Sorry, we're almost done.
well, we can at least, you know, if anybody needs to leave, we can just continue recording and then the recording is
Okay.
available, so.
We're good.
Okay.
Funny
All right.
jokes are coming up. So e-bikes, I made disparaging comments several times already about e-bikes. Actually, I think they're great. I encourage them. However, you need to be aware of where they're allowed and where they're not allowed in Flagstaff. So just a quick.
Yeah, because there are
primer.
places where they're not allowed, yes.
Really?
Mhm.
Even if they're bike?
Even though they're bikes, because they go really fast.
That is a really, really good question.
It's a great question.
Even though they're bikes.
Even the word bike is in there, yes.
All right,
That's funny.
e-bikes are generally divided into 3 classes. 1 and 2 go up to 20 miles per hour. One of them is pedal assist, so you have to be pedaling. The other one has a throttle, so you can go 20 miles an hour just with a throttle. And then the
Yeah,
class
it's like
3
almost a scooter.
Class
Uh-huh.
3 goes up to 28 miles per hour, but they are always pedal assist. So based on that, if you're in a bike lane, you can ride a class 1, 2, or 3 e-bike in a bike. So anything
Piece cake.
goes.
Right?
On a foots trail, you can ride class 1 and 2, but not 3. But there are 2 exceptions to that: the Nate Avery Trail in Buffalo Park and the Arizona Trail through the middle of town don't allow e-bikes.
So the Arizona Trail goes down from
Buffalo Park.
Buffalo
to
Park,
San
down
Francisco
Ponderosa,
since-
yeah, down Ponderosa, crosses by the Starbucks, you know, and then crosses the tracks, and then it goes under Butler, and then it goes along by Taco Bell and
Yeah.
Sam's Club, and then it heads into the forest. So that stretch through town is a no-no. On an e-bike. Yes, on a bike. Yeah, you're good to go. Okay, conclusion.
Key points. We'll take turns.
Okay,
Okay, key point number 1, bicyclists fare best when they act as drivers of vehicles. When you're on the roadway, you act like a car.
same rules,
follow
same
the
rights,
rules,
same
yeah.
everything. Stop
Yeah,
at stop
yeah.
signs. Green means go, you know, yield, stop, the whole shebang.
Think about it from a driver's perspective. If you are acting like they expect other drivers to act, you're a lot more predictable. If they know how you're going to act.
Like, oh, they're in the
You're
left turn
acting
lane.
like a driver.
Okay. I'll go behind them and turn, you know, same thing.
Number 2,
Oh, follow the rules of the road. Okay, I just said that. Keep going.
Number 3, know where to position yourself in the lane, as we talked about with all the turning movements and so on, including taking the lane when it's necessitated.
Be predictable. So, like Martin said, let the drivers know what you're going to be doing. Don't swerve in and out of cars, parked cars and things like that. You know, straight line, don't jump curbs and, you know, be all crazy on your bike.
I jump curve.
Yeah, no, not on the roadway. Do that somewhere else where you're not gonna get hit by a car.
I do it in my neighborhood.
In your neighborhood. What do we have to? Number 5, pay special attention to intersections and driveways. We went, through the different turning movements, and actually, a lot of crashes occur at driveways and intersections because of the different conflict points between bicycles and vehicles. So if you're more careful there, you're kind of, again, controlling your own destiny as far as crashes go.
And then avoid riding on sidewalks. Really, bicyclists should be on the road. Now, since we have kids here, I will say, kids under 10 don't have the I don't want to say mental capacity, but they can't anticipate what they need to anticipate that adults can. Their brain is still developing, so they can't anticipate, oh, that car's coming, they have their turn signal there, you know what I mean?
They're cognitive.
They're just not quite there yet. So if they're under 10 and they're by themselves, now if they're with an adult, I rode with my kids all the time. I had them ride behind me, modeling what I would do. You know what I mean? Safety in numbers, there's several of us, we're good. But if they're by themselves, they would be on the sidewalk until they're 10, 11. Then they need to be on the road. You know what I mean?
And kids under 10 are going a lot slower anyway, so they're almost more like pedestrians in that case.
Right, and so they should be on the sidewalk. Okay, I'm just gonna say that only because they're kids.
I'm 10.
You're 10, okay, you're just about there. All right, so the benefits, ride safely and legally. Okay.
And be confident. So confidence comes from knowing that you're doing the right thing and that you're behaving in a way that's as safe as possible. Makes you more confident in any, even when there's a lot of traffic around.
Be a bike ambassador. Oh, oops. I was actually just saying that, I didn't read it. Set a good example for other cyclists. Okay, so maybe another second's like, oh, I'm riding on the wrong side of the road, and maybe next time they'll do the same. And
And,
then,
I think that's related to being an ambassador. But, bicyclists who behave badly and, go through red lights and stop signs and so on, often are annoyed drivers, right? The drivers are unhappy when they see that, and then drivers sort of tend to clump all of us who ride a bicycle into a single class.
darn, I know.
Yeah, people who ride through red lights. So when we set a good example and are safe, that benefits all bicyclists.